The Byzantine Rite, also known as the Greek Rite, Rite of Constantinople or Constantinopolitan Rite, is the liturgical rite currently used by the Eastern Orthodox Church and some Eastern Catholic churches. Its development began during the 3rd century in Constantinople, and it is now the second most used rite in Christendom after the Roman Rite. The rite consists of the divine liturgies, canonical hours, forms for the administration of sacred mysteries, and the numerous prayers, blessings and exorcisms developed by the Church of Constantinople. Also involved are the specifics of architecture, icons, liturgical music, vestments and traditions which have evolved over the centuries in the practice of this rite. Traditionally, the congregation stands throughout the whole service, and an iconostasis separates the sanctuary from the nave of the church. Also, traditionally, the major clergy and monks neither shave nor cut their hair or beards. Scripture plays a large role in Byzantine worship, with not only daily readings but also many quotes from the Bible throughout the services. The entire Psalter is read each week, and twice weekly during Great Lent. Fasting is stricter than in the West. On fast days, the faithful give up not only meat but also dairy products, and on many fast days they also give up fish, wine and the use of oil in cooking. The rite observes 4 fasting seasons: Great Lent, Nativity Fast, Apostles' Fast and Dormition Fast. In addition, most Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the year are fast days, and many monasteries also observe Monday as a fast day. History. There are 2 ancient liturgical traditions from which all of the Eastern rites developed: the Alexandrian Rite in Egypt and the Antiochian Rite in Syria. These 2 rites developed directly from practices of the early Church. Of these 2 traditions, the Rite of Constantinople developed from the Antiochian Rite. Prior to the See of Constantinople's elevation to the dignity of Patriarch by the Second Ecumenical Council in 381, the primary jurisdiction in Asia Minor was the Patriarchate of Antioch. With the Council's elevation of Constantinople to primacy in the East, with the words, "The Bishop of Constantinople shall have the prerogative of honor after the Bishop of Rome, because Constantinople is New Rome," the Constantinopolitan Rite gradually came to be the standard usage in every place under its jurisdiction. Because the Rite of Constantinople evolved as a synthesis of 2 distinct rites, Cathedral Rite of Constantinople called the Asmatikia Kolouthia, and the monastic Typicon of the Holy Lavra of Saint Sebast the Sanctified near Jerusalem. Its offices are highly developed and quite complex. Further developments continued to occur, centered mostly around Constantinople and Mount Athos. Monasticism played an important role in the development of the rituals. In Constantinople, the work of the monastery of the Studiones greatly enriched the liturgical traditions, especially with regard to the Lenten observance. Iconography continued to develop, and a canon of traditional patterns evolved which still influences Eastern religious art to this day. Historical events have also influenced the development of the liturgy. The great Christological and Trinitarian controversies of late antiquity are reflected in the glorifications of the Trinity heard in the numerous epiphanies encountered during the services. In response to Nestorius' attack on giving the title of Theotokos to the Virgin Mary, the Byzantines increased the use of the term in the liturgy, and now almost every string of hymns ends with one in her honor, called a Theotokion. All liturgical rites change and develop over time. As new saints are canonized, new hymns are composed, as new needs arise, new prayers are written. The rite also profits from the fact that the Christian East is not so centralized in ecclesiastical polity as the West. This allows for greater diversity, and as members of one church visit another, a natural cross-pollination occurs with resultant enrichment on all sides. In spite of its great emphasis on tradition, the Byzantine Rite comprises a constantly growing and expanding ritual, with room for local practice. Divine liturgies. The tradition of the Church of Constantinople ascribes the oldest of its 2 main divine liturgies to St. Basil the Great, Metropolitan of Caesarea in Cappadocia. This tradition is confirmed by the witness of several ancient authors, some of whom were contemporaries. It is certain that St. Basil made a reformation of the liturgy of his church, and that the Byzantine service called after him represents his reformed liturgy in its chief parts, although it has undergone further modification since his time. St. Basil himself speaks on several occasions of the changes he made in the services of Caesarea, and other contemporary witnesses attest his arrangement of the services. Basil had as his goal the streamlining of the services to make them more cohesive and attractive to the faithful. He also worked to reform the clergy and improve the moral life of Christians. He shortened the services and wrote a number of new prayers. The most important work attributed to him is the Divine Liturgy of St. Basil. He took as his basis the Liturgy of St. James as it was celebrated at his time in the region of Cappadocia, as well as some liturgical elements recorded in the apostolic constitutions. Over time, the Liturgy of St. Basil gained wide usage in Asia Minor and Syria. Peter the Deacon mentions that Basil's liturgy was used by nearly the whole East. However, the Coptic Rite uses another liturgy which is also attributed to St. Basil, so Peter the Deacon's reference may not be to the liturgy of St. Basil used in the Byzantine Rite. St. Basil's liturgical work was continued by John Chrysostom, Patriarch of Constantinople. He wrote new prayers for the Divine Liturgy, as well as other prayers. The Divine Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom is the most common form of the liturgy used in the Rite today. It must be borne in mind that neither the liturgies of Basil nor John Chrysostom as they are known today reflect exactly the services celebrated in their day. Divine Liturgy. This tradition has several forms of the Divine Liturgy, three of which are in use everywhere that the Byzantine Rite is used. The Liturgy of St. Basil the Great, the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom, and the Liturgy of the Pre-Sanctified Gifts. The Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom is the one most commonly celebrated throughout the year. The Liturgy of St. Basil is celebrated 10 times a year, on the 5 Sundays in Great Lent, with Vespers on Holy Thursday and Holy Saturday, on the eves with Vespers of Christmas and Theophany, and on January 1st, which is the feast day of St. Basil. The Liturgy of the Pre-Sanctified Gifts is celebrated only on certain weekdays of Great Lent, on Wednesdays, Fridays and any of the more important feast days which may occur. It is also served on the first 3 days of Holy Week. The Divine Liturgy is normally not celebrated daily except in cathedrals and larger monasteries. However, most parishes and smaller monasteries serve the liturgy on Saturdays, Sundays, and major feast days throughout the year, when a bishop officiates. The Divine Liturgy has an expanded form with particular solemnity, though other services are also affected by being officiated by a bishop. None is more so than the liturgy. Daily office. The daily cycle begins with Vespers and proceeds throughout the night and day according to the following table. The Typica is used whenever the Divine Liturgy is not celebrated at its usual time, i.e., when there is a Vesperal liturgy or no liturgy at all. On days when the liturgy may be celebrated at its usual hour, the Typica follows the 6th hour and the epistle and gospel readings for the day are read therein. Otherwise, on aliturgical days or when the liturgy is served at Vespers, the Typica has a much shorter form and is served between the 9th hour and Vespers. Also, there are inter-hours for the 1st, 3rd, 6th and 9th hours. These are services of a similar structure to, but briefer than, the hours. Their usage varies with local custom, but generally they are used only during the Nativity Fast, Apostles' Fast, and/or Mission Fast on days where the Lenten Alleluia replaces God is the Lord at Matins, which may be done at the discretion of the ecclesiarch when the Divine Liturgy is not celebrated. In addition to these public prayers, there are also private prayers prescribed for both monastics and laypersons. In some monasteries, however, these are read in church. These include morning and evening prayers and prayers to be prayed in preparation for receiving the Eucharist. The full cycle of services are usually served only in monasteries, cathedrals, and other Catholica. In monasteries and parishes of the Russian tradition, the third and sixth hours are read during the prothesis. Otherwise, the prothesis is served during matins, the final portion of which is omitted. The liturgy of the catechumens commencing straightway after the troparion following the Great Doxology. The midnight office is seldom served in parishes' churches except at the Paschal Vigil as the essential office wherein the burial shroud is removed from the tomb and carried to the altar. Aggregates. The sundry canonical hours are, in practice, grouped together into aggregates so that there are three major times of prayer at day, evening, morning and midday. The most common groupings are as follows. Ordinary days: evening, 9th hour, vespers, compline, morning watches, midnight office, matins, 1st hour, morning, 3rd hour, 6th hour, and the divine liturgy or typica. Weekdays during Lent: evening, great compline, morning watches, midnight office, matins, 1st hour, morning, 3rd hour, 6th hour, 9th hour, typica, vespers. When there is an all-night vigil on the eves before great feasts and, in some traditions, on all Sundays, this grouping is used. However, the all-night vigil is usually abridged so as to not last literally all night, and may be as short as 2 hours. On the other hand, on Athos and in the very traditional monastic institutions, that service followed by the hours and liturgy may last as long as 18 hours. Afternoon, 9th hour, little vespers, compline, early night, compline, great vespers, a reading, matins, 1st hour, when the royal hours are read: evening, 9th hour, vespers, compline, morning watches, midnight office, matins, morning, 1st, 3rd, 6th, and 9th hours, and the typica. On the eves of Christmas, Theophany, and Annunciation when the feast is a weekday, Vespers is served earlier in the day and so Great Compline functions much as Great Vespers does on the vigils of other feast days. Evening, Great Compline, and, if there be an all-night vigil, the reading, matins, 1st hour, morning watches, midnight office, matins, 1st hour, sacraments and other services performed as needed. Local variations. Two main strata exist in the rite. Those places that have inherited the traditions of the Russian Church which had been given only the monastic Tsarbeta typicon which she uses to this day in parishes and cathedrals as well as in monasteries, and everywhere else where some remnant of the cathedral rite remained in use. Therefore, the rite as practiced in monasteries everywhere resembles the Russian recension, while non-Russian non-monastic customs differ significantly. For example, in the Russian tradition, the all-night vigil is served in every church on Saturday nights and the eves of feast days, while elsewhere, it is usual to have matins on the morning of the feast. However, in the latter instance, Vespers and Matins are rather less abridged, but the divine liturgy commences at the end of Matins and the hours are not read, as was the case in the extinct Cathedral Rite of Constantinople. Also, as the rite evolved in sundry places, different customs arose. An essay on some of these has been written by Archbishop Basil Kravoshine and is posted on the web.